Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome everybody to our last small talk of our summer season. We're going to be taking a bit of a break and then we'll be coming back to you in the fall, potentially in person as well. We're looking forward to that. Some quick introductions.
My name is Jennifer. I'm the assistant curator here at the Transcona Museum.
And I'm Alana, and I'm the curator here at the Transcona Museum.
So today's talk is tongue-tied, is going to be about the Transcona connection. So, you know, who has a connection to Transcona? So we'll be talking a lot about, famous names that you might know, some of which you've never heard before, and how they are connected to the community of Transcona. This is a part one of sorts. So if we miss a name, we'll address them in a part two discussion, in the coming months. So yeah, we're going to switch on over to our PowerPoint now. There we go.
Yeah, usually just gotta.
Okay, so before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the Transcona Museum resides on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, as well as the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation.
So to start off, we thought let's start with film and TV connections.
So our first one, what we see on the screen is a little bit different what you see on the screen.
I'm just gonna move that down.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so Drew Layton Tartiere, she was an American actress, and during the Second World War, she would help 42 downed Allied flyers escape occupied France, and she hid many others in her home just outside of Paris until the war ended. One of these men was Flight Officer Daniel Murphy of Transcona, who was injured following air operations over France in July 1944. And this is him right here in the image. And there's Drew herself with several other Allied officers that she was assisting at the time the photograph was taken. So with the help of Drew and the French resistance, Murphy would survive the war and return home to his family in Transcona. Now, before joining the French resistance, Drew herself was arrested by the Nazis in 1942, but managed to escape from the prison camp she was being held in by the help of local French doctors. She would write all about her wartime experience in the book, The House Near Paris, which we have a copy of here at the museum. And so this book was written in 1946, and she would die many years later in 1997 in her home in California.
So I didn't know about this story. We didn't have any records of it here at the museum until I believe it was a relative of Daniel Murphy contacted the museum, told us this story, and actually donated a copy of the book, A House Near Paris. And what's really interesting is when the Nazis were looking for her, they were looking for Drew Layton. They didn't realize, or they didn't put two and two together, that she had gotten married and changed her last name. So that was also one of the ways she was able to skirt around and avoid the Nazis for as long as she did, because they didn't put two and two together that she had remarried, or she had married and changed her name. And we did actually find a little clip on YouTube of one of her movies too.
Yes, this is true. So she did star in quite a few movies in early Hollywood.
Judy Garland, American actress. So Judy Garland and her then husband, Sid Luft, formed the production company Transcona Enterprises in early 1950s. The company would co-produce the celebrated 1954 musical remake A Star is Born, along with Warner Brothers. Transcona Enterprises would produce two other films, The Bounty Hunter in 1954, co-produced with Warner Brothers again, and The Helen Morgan Story in 1957. What events inspired Garland to use the name Transcona for her production company remains unclear. I remember reading, and I believe it was on IMDb, but now that information isn't there, or it's in a different section. But apparently she drove through, what I read, or what I remember reading, was that she drove through Transcona at some point and went, I like the name. And that's how she came up with it. That's what I remember reading. I don't know if that's 100% correct. Be kind of cool if it was.
And I when doing research for this small talk, I looked at a bunch of books that were available online talking about the production company, and they didn't ever mention where they got the name. So more research is needed.
Yeah, I remember finding it somewhere, but again, that was a few years ago, and that's my recollection of what I read.
So Bradford Howe, a Canadian presenter. He was born in 1977, and he is a former Transcona resident. He got a start in radio at CKUW-FM, the radio station at the University of Winnipeg. He was a Much Music DJ from 2000 to 2003 and became one of the channel's most well-liked video jockeys. He left Much Music to pursue other ambitions. He currently resides in New York City and works as a commercial actor and TV host.
And I remember when he was on Much Music.
I do not. So now we're going to discuss a few athletic connections to Transcona.
So Terry Fox, Canadian athlete. So Terry Fox was born in Winnipeg in 1958 and lived in Transcona for about 8 years. He attended grades 2 and 3 at Wayota School. His dad actually worked at the Transcona shops. After losing his right leg to cancer at 18, Terry Fox decided to run across Canada to raise awareness and money for cancer research. Fox began his Marathon of Hope in April 1980, but was forced to stop months later when cancer invaded his lungs. And then he died shortly before his 23rd birthday in 1981. He is the youngest person ever named Companion of the Order of Canada. He's considered a national hero. He's had many buildings, statues, roads, and parks, even a school named after him in his honor across Canada. Now, we actually have in our St. Vital Negatives collection, so those images that were taken for the Transcona newspaper, images of people going at Wayota School, waiting to register for the school year. And the years are approximately the right years that we have those images. So I was scouring through them to see if I could see a picture, if we had a picture of Terry Fox when he was a young child. I couldn't identify him in any of them, but that would have been a really cool find.
Did we also not get a phone book that listed his parents' phone address?
Yes, we had an individual come into the museum and he donated to us a digital copy of the phone book. So we have the address and the phone number of the Fox family here in Transcona. And we actually made it one of the locations that people had to find in the last time we did the Amazing Race Transcona.
Yes, that was 2019. That was the year
where all of this happened.
Cal Gardner, Canadian hockey player. So Cal Gardner was born in Transcona in 1924, and he played hockey for one of the local teams in the community. There's actually a picture of him right here. He began his hockey career in 1942 when he played for the Winnipeg Rangers, and he would play on other teams, including the New York Rangers, along with fellow Transconian Renee Trudel, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Chicago Blackhawks and the Boston Bruins. Cal played for the Leafs when they captured the 1951 Stanley Cup, and the 93 song 50 Mission Cap by the Tragically Hip is a tribute to Cal's teammate Bill Barilko, who scored the winning goal in the finals. In 1985, Cal was inducted into the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame as an individual, and again in 2002 as a member of the 43 Winnipeg Rangers. He would pass away in Toronto in 2001.
And we actually have a photograph of the Leafs. It's not the 1951 Stanley Cup winners. It's a couple years before that, but it has both Cal and Bill in the image. So it's our one little connection that we found to the Tragically Hip here in at the museum. Renee Trudel, Canadian hockey player. So Renee Trudel was born in Mariopolis, Manitoba in 1919, and his family moved to Transcona sometime before 1926. His hockey career began in 1937 when Trudel played for the Portage La Prairie Terriers. During the Second World War, he played for Great Britain's Haringey Racers and later for the Winnipeg RCAF Bombers. Trudel, as a right winger, played with the Boston Rangers from 1945. New York Rangers from 1945 to 48, and his teammate was fellow Transconian Cal Gardner. He retired from hockey in 1949, and he died in San Francisco in 1972.
So we have a fantastic image of both Trudel and Gardner as when they were playing for the Rangers. Susan Auck, Canadian speed skater. She was born and raised in Transcona and graduated from Murdoch McKay Collegiate. Auck began competitive speed skating at age 9. Professionally, she spent 17 years representing Canada in speed skating competitions at 5 Winter Olympic Games. She has won 3 Olympic medals, 2 silver and 1 bronze. She is also the first Canadian woman to break the 39 seconds barrier in the 500-meter speed skating event. In 1998, Susan Auck Park in Transcona was dedicated in her honor. She was inducted into the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame and Museum in 2003, the Canadian Olympic Hall of Fame in 2010, and the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame in 2015. And there she is right there at the park dedication ceremony.
Mm-hmm. And I think we also have an image or two in our collection of she came into the museum during that same ceremony day or something like that here. So Victoria Jason, Canadian adventurer. Victoria Jason was a former Transcona resident who was actually employed at the CN shops as a data entry operator. And between 1991 and 1994, Victoria became the first and only woman to kayak and person, actually, not just woman, but person, to kayak the whole of the Northwest Passage alone. She completed her journey after recovering from 2 strokes. In 1996, she wrote a book called Kabluna in the Yellow Kayak, detailing her voyages. She later traveled across Canada as a motivational speaker. She died here in Winnipeg in 2000. And Victoria Jason Park, the original Crocus Park was renamed Victoria Jason Park in 2004 in her commemoration. And we were lucky enough a number of years ago for the 100th anniversary exhibit of Transcona, we were actually able to borrow her canoe, her kayak, and we had it on display and a number of her other items for our Passionate People exhibit that we had then. Yeah, and she was the first person, woman or just first person to ever travel the Northwest Passage.
I need to read the book. We have a copy actually in our archives.
Yeah. I have read through it, and she talks about some of her experiences, and she did do some other kayaking with some other individuals and how she did it and just how difficult it was. It's a very, very good book.
Rod Black, Canadian sports announcer. So Rod Black was raised in Transcona and attended Transcona Collegiate Institute. In sports, he excelled in basketball and hockey. He got a start as a sports announcer in Winnipeg, eventually announcing for CTV and TSN in his later career. In his 30 years as a sports journalist, he has been involved with a variety of different events and competitions. The broadcaster is also the former co-host of CTV's national morning show, Canada AM. A crescent near Plessis Road in Transcona was named in his honor.
And a number of years ago, I don't know how many, I was watching the Winter Olympics, and I was watching speed skating, and it was Susan Auck and Rod Black who were doing the commentary. And I was like, Transcona represent. Kenny Omega, Canadian pro wrestler. So born in 1983, Tyson Smith grew up in Transcona. As a child, he played ice hockey as a goalie. He first became interested in a career in professional wrestling after one of his friends from Transcona Collegiate began training in Winnipeg. Smith made his pro wrestling debut in 2000. As Kenny Omega, he is known for his charisma, willingness, and ability to perform impressive athletic feats. He has become a star in the Japanese pro wrestling circuit. He is the executive vice president of All Elite Wrestling, where he is also signed as a performer. He is the current AAA World Heavyweight Champion and the AEW World Champion, and he lives in Japan.
So now we'll talk about some science and tech connections. So John Ross, a Canadian tech innovator. He moved to Transcona in 1946, and his mother was a teacher at Central School and Leota School. From his attic at 111 Whittier Avenue East, Ross built a receiver that showed the first color television pictures from a Canadian transmitter. And this was 10 years before color television officially debuted in Canada. Now, what's unique about this is, these stations, say from America, would broadcast in color, but the Canadian, Canada would have to convert the color into black and white because they didn't have tech to be able to display color TV, right? So he's the one that invented this.
Yeah, he built it in his attic. He built a machine so he could actually view the television in color 10 years before anyone else in Canada got to.
So after working for television stations in Winnipeg, he founded Ross Video Limited in 1974. And his company designs, manufactures, and supports a wide range of innovative products for use in video production applications. He retired from the company in 2005. And in 2012, he was awarded the Order of Canada for his contributions as a technology innovator. And that is an image right here from the Winnipeg Free Press in the 50s of him working on his, I think it was the receiver.
So arts and culture connections. So Mel McMullen, Canadian magician. He, born in 1903, Mel McMullen came to Transcona in 1931 when he was hired as the manager for North American Lumber, and that's where Lumber Zone is today. For the rest of his life, Mel would become very involved in the Transcona community. Under the stage name Len Ventus, he would perform with his ventriloquist dummy Jerry. He was also the founding member and the first president of the International Brotherhood of Magicians, which has existed since 1922. Mel held membership number 1 until his death. In 1980, he received an honor from the Academy of Magical Arts in Hollywood. He was also known as Mr. Manitoba. Mel held an unfailing enthusiasm for the province, its heritage and resources, and he died in Winnipeg in 1999. And we have Jerry in our collection here at the museum, and we have a number of his books and other items that belong to Mel. And we actually made a YouTube video all about Mel McMullen that is available on our YouTube channel. And I'll try to link it down below.
Yep.
When we get this after the live.
Peter Jordan, Canadian presenter. So Peter Jordan, sometimes known as Rocky Roletti, is an actor and television presenter, and he is best known for the work series It's a Living, which was broadcast on CBC from 1989 to 2003. His band took Winnipeg's entertainment scene by storm with its groovy take on rock and roll back in the 1980s. And his first performance as Rocky Roletti was at the Transcona Country Club in 1980. His satirical song, Transcona Anthem, which we actually shared to our social media page not too long ago, helped to forge a cultural link between flamingos and Transcona. Although not from Transcona, Rocky Roletti was chosen as the honorary mayor of Transcona during the 75th anniversary celebrations in 1986.
Yep. John Danakis, Canadian author. So Hockey Night in Transcona from 1995 is a children's book written by Winnipeg author John Danakis. The book is part of a sports series of novels by the author. And the story is about the conflicting pressures of young hockey players face in the quest to succeed. In the book, hockey player Cody Powell skates with his community club team, the Transcona Sharks. John Danakis was born in Winnipeg in 1963. He studied at the University of Manitoba and has worked as a journalist and media relations officer.
And so now we'll talk about some historical connections. Eulalie Riel Gladue, sister of Louis Riel. Eulalie Julie Riel was the younger sister of Louis Riel, Métis leader and founder of Manitoba. And this is her right here on the left in the photograph. She was born in 1853 at the Red River Colony, and Eulalie married William Gladue in 1879 at the St. Boniface Cathedral. The couple had 7 children together. Sometime around 1922, the couple moved to Transcona, and they lived at 76 Melrose Avenue. The home, though, is no longer there. Eulalie died at home in 1931. Her funeral, which was overseen by Greenwood's Funeral Home, was held at Our Lady of the Assumption Church in Transcona, and she was laid to rest at the St. Boniface Roman Catholic Cemetery, which is located on Archibald Street. Her husband actually would die in the 1940s on, he was living at Yale Avenue at the time.
Rumored connections. So Charles Thorson, also known as Charlie Thorson, Canadian cartoonist. So born in Winnipeg in the 1890s, Thorson would work in American animation studios, including the Walt Disney Company and Warner Brothers. He contributed sketches of hundreds of cartoon characters, including Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd, and apparently he designed Snow White. He also created the character Pumpkinhead, which appeared in Eaton's catalogs. Rumor has it that Thorson created his sketches of Snow White on a waitress that he met. I don't know if it was necessarily Transcona, but it was somewhere in Winnipeg. But the museum, we have a collection of a few of his cards that feature Thorson's cartoon creations in our archives. So it's unclear because he apparently also worked at like a lumber company, which maybe it was North American Lumber. But it's interesting that we have a number of his cards that I believe that were sent to different people here in our collection. So did he live in Transcona? We have a connection to him. But yeah, he's rumored to have designed Snow White.
And he passed away in Vancouver in 1966. Al Capone, American gangster. So while overseeing bootlegging operations in Winnipeg in the 1920s, Al Capone was also rumored to have visited Transcona for similar reasons. It's rumored that the Prince of Wales Hotel, which is today the Central Hotel, was the base of his operations while in Transcona. There is an established history of Capone's presence in Moose Jaw, for example, and his rum running operations out of the prairies. Unfortunately, the historical record of 1920s Transcona is very sparse. We didn't actually have a newspaper from about 1918 to 1931, so we'll never really know for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. It's another connection for me because I'm originally from Moose Jaw, and so we have this Al Capone connection, and then I come to Transcona and I hear about another Al Capone connection. But a lot of it had to do with the railway being right there, and Moose Jaw was a direct link to Chicago or something like that, and we have the railway coming through here at a significant point here in Transcona. So it'd be interesting to find out if that's actually true. Rosie the Riveter, World War II cultural icon. So Rosie the Riveter was an allegorical cultural icon from the Second World War, representing women war workers. So here in Transcona, or just outside of Transcona, was the Cordite plant. It was a munitions factory, again, located outside the community in World War II. And women from the community worked at the plant between 1943 and 1945. And there's a photo in our collection of the plant workers, complete with their names. And one of the names is
Roland Carrière.
And in it, it says thought to be Rosie the Riveter. And that's the information that we have with the photograph and when it was donated. So there's very little information on who Roland Carrière might be or how she's associated with Rosie the Riveter, but that's the information that was given to us about this woman may be connected to the Rosie the Riveter.
Or a Canadian version of her.
Yes.
Because Rosie existed in various allied countries.
Yes, there was all of this. It was that sort of propaganda on World War II. So like, sign up, do your duty, help out in any way you can.
So I think this is the last, this is the last connection that we're going to chat about today, but it's from actual people that we know of to these rumored connections, Al Capone, Rosie the Riveter, connecting to French resistance members. Like, it's kind of crazy that Transcona has had this, we're connected to history. We really are.
Yeah, and this is just some of them. I'm sure people in the community or who've since moved away from the community know more, potential connections than what we have here. So again, if you know of some connections of individuals or of situations or something that we've missed, please let us know in the comments down below if you're watching this on Facebook or later on YouTube too, because we'd love to do a version 2 or a part 2 where we can dive down into some of these as well. I'm just going to check to see if we have any comments on Facebook.
So while Alana's doing that, thank you so much for joining us this summer for our summer series of small talks. We're going to take a bit of a hiatus for a bit and come back in the fall, with new talks, new topics, part 2s, part 5s,
Yeah, some of that. And we're hoping to maybe start offering these once again in person, which would be wonderful to have that interaction while we're giving our presentations.
So if you like what we do, please consider supporting us. You can make a donation, you could become a museum member, you can follow us on social media. We also have a newsletter. We are very good at posting updates on our website and our social media pages for upcoming events and programs. So keep watching those. And I think that's it for us today.
Yeah, so we'll see you soon.
Bye.